25 years ago, Faridabad was considered the future. It had an active municipality, it had an industrial area, investment was pouring in, the agriculture was rich, it had a direct link to Delhi, and the state government wanted to showcase it as the future of Haryana. Same time, there was a town nearby called Gurgaon, which was a wilderness. It had rocky soil, the agriculture stank, and even the goats ran away. But now, 25 years later, Gurgaon is the Millennium City. 32 million square feet of commercial space has come out, which houses the world's great corporations. It has 27 malls, 7 golf courses. It has fabled apartment complexes. And 25 years later, Faridabad is groaning under the weight of corruption and red tape of babus and mantris and that active municipality. Whereas Gurgaon just got a municipality a couple of years ago. So what happened here? And why did Gurgaon rise out of the wilderness? I think Gurgaon's disadvantage turned out to be an advantage. It was totally ignored by the government. And therefore there was very little red tape, or bureaucrats, or public figures who could stop development. The people of Gurgaon did it from below. When there was no water, they dug bore wells. When there was no electricity, they put generators. When they could not get a telephone line from the government company, they started using cell phones. When the police did not show up, they used security guards. When the teachers were absent in schools, they put up private schools. When the doctors were absent in the government health clinics, they put up private health clinics. So Gurgaon is something, in a way, to be admired as a people's success. And in a way, Gurgaon is the new India writ large, a story of private success and public failure. And this is why when two Indians in the new India sit down to sip chai, they say India grows at night when the government sleeps. But surely we would want India to grow during the day. The citizens of Gurgaon would be happier if they had nice roads with pavements, parks, functioning schools, hospitals, electricity, water, the things that a city we all would expect from the government of a city. And so, this is really the theme of my new book, India Grows at Night. And the subtitle of the book is A Liberal Case for a Strong State. So what I'm suggesting is, as the story of the last 25 years is a story which is not sustainable. And in India today, why should it take us 10, 12 years to build a road when it takes 3 anywhere else? Why should it take 10, 15 years to get justice when it should take 2 or 3 years? We've seen a dramatic example a couple of days ago in New York concerning a very respected Indian, Rajat Gupta, who has been sentenced to jail within a period of a couple of years for inside trading. Now, in my view, that's an example of a strong liberal state. So a strong state, I'm not thinking about Mao's China or Stalin's Russia or even benign Singapore. I'm thinking of the state which was in the minds of the founding fathers of our country. And such a state has 3 pillars. One, it has an executive that can take determined, decisive, quick action when needed. That action is bounded by the rule of law. So nobody is above the rule of law, not even Mr. Robert Vadra. And it is accountable to the people. Now, it's not easy to get this act together. We are having this problem, but other countries also face a similar problem. Because sometimes the desire to get accountability weakens the ability to take action. As we have seen that in the last couple of years with the Anna Hazare movement, which is a movement for accountability, the bureaucracy of Delhi, which is already very timid, has totally stopped putting its signature on a piece of paper. And so this is, though, a point in time. We have reached the point in time in history when we need to do reforms of our institutions. India got freedom in 1947, but we only got our political freedom. We got our economic freedom in 1991. Now, 20 years later, when a third of India has become a new middle class, this middle class has been awakened by this Anna Hazare movement. And so we have achieved a degree of dignity. We have achieved a degree of dignity. And this new middle class is saying that those people who travel around with red lights on their cars and then make us wait in their offices for hours and tie us with red tape, we are not going to stand for that kind of corruption in our society. So we are at a cusp in history, and what should be done? Now, before I discuss what should be done, I think we should also understand who we are as Indians, because this will create the boundary of what we can become. India's story is a bottom-up success, a people's success, unlike China, which is a top-down success. And that is why in the last 20 years, India has created about 24 globally competitive companies, which are the envy of China. In fact, a friend of mine, who is a Chinese friend and comes to me, visit me because he invests in India, and he tries to get stock tips from me, but now he has stopped visiting me because he thinks I give him terrible advice. He one day came with a backache, and I said, "What's the problem?" He had been to Haryana and in the roads and seeing factories where he wanted to invest. And he asked me that, how did India become the second fastest growing economy in the world with this kind of infrastructure? So I told him India grows at night. And he thought for a while. And then he said, "You mean India has risen with one hand tied?" And then he said, "The nightmare of the Chinese leadership will be, what if that second hand got untied? India would truly become formidable." The mistake we make is to think that the race between China and India is a race for who will get rich first. Well, both countries will turn into middle-class countries, and won't be stopped. But the race will be won by who will fix its government first. If China fixes its politics first, it will win the race. If India fixes its governance first, it will win the race. And if neither fixes its state, then both countries will get stuck in what economists call the middle income trap. Now, the other mistake we make is to believe that our government has become weak only in recent times. We think we ascribe it to a weak prime minister, we ascribe it to coalition politics, we ascribe it to the gridlock in parliament and various reasons. But we forget that actually India has always been a weak state and a strong society, unlike China, which has been a strong state and a weak society. And that's why the Indian is defined by his place in society, and the Chinese is defined by his place by the state. And this is why India's history is a history of political disunity, of competing kingdoms, and China's history is a history of empires. We had 4 empires in our history: the Maurya, the Gupta, the British, the Mughal, and the British. And all 4 were weaker than the weakest Chinese empire. And what is to be done? My book is not a how-to book. It's not a here's 5 things that India needs to fix itself. But there's a chapter called What is to be Done. And what is to be done, if we were lucky, we could have a strong leader who was also a reformer. But you can't ensure that in a democracy. My hope really lies with the new middle class, which is now about 1/3 of India, and in a decade it will be about half of India. And then the politics of India will also change. So, as we look forward, a couple of thoughts. One is this new middle class. It is looking for the future. It's looking to the future. And when we think of 2014, there's not a single person we can think of voting for, not a single party that we would like to vote for. And so what I have suggested is a liberal party, perhaps a revival of the old ideal liberal Swatantra party. But this liberal party will not only stand for economic reform, but also institutional reform. And of course it will be secular. Today, the young middle class is treated as though it were a victim by all the parties. And so our politics are politics of grievance. The Congress party says, "Oh, you poor fellow, you lost out in liberalization, globalization, so we have to give you free power, subsidized diesel, subsidized food, Nariga jobs, etc." The BJP says, "Oh, you're a victim of 1,000 years of Muslim invasions." The Dalit parties say you're a victim of upper caste oppression. So do the OBC parties. And nobody talks about aspiration. And that's what 1/3 of India is aspiring for the future. And so I say, what do we do? 1 hour per week. That was the insight of Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote the greatest book on democracy. He saw that America's success lay in the grassroots democracy because Americans spent 1 hour a week trying to fix, instead of fixing corruption of Robert Vadra and Gadkari, we should be thinking about fixing corruption in our neighborhood. And 1 hour a week. So the best idea that Kejriwal has given is actually Mohalla Sabhas in our wards, in our cities, Gram Sabhas, and the legislation is there, but it needs to be operationalized. Finally, in closing, let me just say that not all, but nations tend to have a code word, which is like a key. And this key unlocks the secrets of a country. The code word for America was liberty. And all the good things and bad things that they do in America are in the name of liberty, including the Tea Party movement. The code word for France is égalité, equality. And they pass the craziest legislations in France, most bizarre, on the name of equality. What is the code word for India? Let me suggest one word. You may disagree with me. Sadharan Dharma. And those people who were building our constitution, our founding fathers, they were so committed to Dharma, Sadharan Dharma, that they put the wheel of Dharma in the flag of the country to remind us about public Dharma, which means Dharma is doing the right thing. It does not mean religion. That's the classical meaning of Dharma. And so, perhaps, if we think of translating, and I think of this new party, if it wants to translate the ideals of the Constitution into something that the people will understand, where they will internalize the rule of law, then maybe we need to revive what Gandhi tried to do, and which was to put it in the language of the people. And so that code word for India could well be Dharma, or understood as that universal Sadharan Dharma. Thank you very much.